problems are occurring in your code, especially when your main tools are just putting in print statements and trying to see what actually comes out. In this video, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to debugging with GDB, which is designed to make this a whole lot easier. So I've written a simple program here. This just takes an array and then tries to print out the middle element of that array. So we're going to go ahead and compile that. G++ print G. And then we can go ahead and execute it. And it's segfaults. Okay, so here now you might normally just be able to go back and look at the program and figure out what's wrong. It's a pretty simple program. But let's go ahead and try to debug it with GDB. So we'll use GDB and then the name of the program just as if you were executing it. So /print middle. Okay, then GDB launches and then we end up with this GDB prompt here where we're going to type in commands to control GDB. So the first command is just run, that runs the program. And when we do this, we get the same basic information that we got a seg fault. And it says that it occurred somewhere in print middle element, the subfunction there. By itself, that's not super helpful. Sometimes it's nice to see, like, how do we get in this situation? What were the set of function calls that got us here? To do that, we can use a backtrace. So BT will give us a backtrace. And this lists all of the functions starting at main that led up to the crash that we're trying to debug. And so here we can see exactly where the crash occurred and what function call, or where was that function called from. But this is, again, these are just the addresses of the function, that the program counter. That's not super helpful. So it would be really nice if we could actually see what line of code this occurred on. So we'll go ahead and close GDB, Control D, or exit will do that. Quit will do that. Okay, so now if we compile with debug symbols, so G++, and then add the -G flag, that'll add extra debugging information about what lines of source code correspond to which bits of the machine code that actually gets generated by the compiler. So G++ -G, print middle .cpp. Okay, and now we can go ahead and run GDB again. We'll go ahead and run the program. And now when we do our backtrace and the original information we got when the program crashed, now actually has line numbers. So print middle.cpp line 10 was specifically the problem. So when we did the printf, that's when we're actually getting the seg fault. And then this particular function was called from main print middle line 18, which of course is the one place that we call this function. Okay, so now we know exactly where the crash occurred, and oftentimes that's enough information to go actually debug. That's good enough. But oftentimes, other times, you want to actually dig down and see how did we get to that situation. And to do this, we want to run the program and then stop before we actually get to the crash. Okay, so let's set a breakpoint right before the crash. So break at print middle.cpp, and let's stop at line 10, so right before we execute line 10, where the crash is. Okay, so now it's added a breakpoint. It's breakpoint number 1. And then we can go ahead and type run, and the program will run until it hits that breakpoint. We already ran it once, so we'll have to tell GDB to go ahead and start over at the beginning. And here we go. It's run and it's hit that breakpoint, and we end up back at the GDB prompt. But so far the program hasn't crashed. We're just stopped in the middle of execution. And so specifically, the execution is at line 10, and we can poke around here and see what's actually going on. So a few things we can do to examine the state. We can print particular values. So for example, I can print array. That seems like array is a pointer to an integer. Looks like a reasonable pointer, at least it's not null. We can print the length. That's 8. Then we can go ahead and print middle. and that's 0. That's the null pointer. So the fact that 0 middle is the null pointer means that when we try to dereference it here, that's going to crash. So that's definitely the problem. And again, so by printing things out, we can often find the problem. Then once you've stopped, you can move forward either one line at a time with step, or you can just continue to run the program with cont. So let's go ahead and just continue. And of course, now the program cite faults. So let's back up one more time and put a breakpoint at line 5 at the very beginning of this function. Okay, we can go ahead and run again from the beginning. And now we can print the length. We can print array. So those again are both valid. And we can step one line. So now we've executed line 5. We can print middle, which of course is null. We could step again. And it says now we've jumped down to line 10. So we never executed the if statement because length is 8, length mod 2 is 0. Okay, and finally we know, again, that the value here is null. So if I actually print out the value of middle, that's null. And we could go ahead and actually modify the value on the fly and then see if that actually fixes the problem. So I could say set middle equals, say, let's just print out the first value of the array. And I can print middle. So now it has a valid value, and I can continue to run the program, cont. And now it prints out the middle element is 2. It doesn't crash. It says that it exited normally, and indeed it did print out the first value of the array. So now I've totally diagnosed the problem. I need to handle the case when there's an even number of elements, when this is false, and fill that in appropriately. And if I do that and make sure the pointer's not null, then my function will work correctly. Of course, this is just the beginning of what GDB can do, but it's good enough for about, 90% of debugging. It'll take a few times before you remember all the commands, but once you do, I think you'll find it's often way faster and way more effective than just trying to put in printf statements in your code. So if you find yourself putting in printf statements and getting stuck and getting confused, just stop, try it in GDB, and see if that gets you somewhere.